What up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to episode 37 of Clipped. I'm Eric, I'm your host, and Clipped is a podcast where I teach podcasting, and I'm bringing you podcast production tips, education, resources, and industry insights to help you start, grow, and monetize a podcast. I'm doing a little something different in this episode. I wanted to talk a little bit about my journey and my company. For those of you that don't know, Clipped falls into the Podcast Haven ecosystem. I'm the founder of the Podcast Haven. We're a full-service podcast production company that produces podcasts for businesses, brands, and influencers. I started the Podcast Haven in 2019. Officially, that's when I officially incorporated. However, it didn't start there. And if it's all right with you guys, I thought I would just go through the journey of my audio career and how I got to where I am and some things that I'm looking forward to in the future.
Explain something.
So yeah, my name is Eric Montgomery, for those of you that don't know. Born and raised in Los Angeles, in Burbank, California. And the reason I kind of want to talk a little bit about my upbringing is because it might just give you a better idea of where I come from and how I got to where I am today in the industry. Burbank is kind of like Hollywood's like secret sister, secret brother. Disney's here, Warner Brothers, Universal Studios, a stone's throw away, just right over the hill. Netflix has now got an office here, tons of production companies. And growing up here, a lot of people's parents, as well as my dad, worked in entertainment. It was kind of like growing up here, you're destined to be part of media or entertainment in some capacity. Like, just runs the gamut, everything from like editors, sound people, grips, gaffers, producers, that type of thing. And so that's kind of what happened to me. I went to college in San Francisco, studied liberal arts. Didn't really use that. Glad I got the degree, but I don't know that I really needed it if I knew that my life was going to turn out this way. Anyway, several years later, moved back to Los Angeles. I currently actually reside in Burbank. I've moved around a little bit in LA, but at the moment I'm back in Burbank, for better or worse, in the Burbank bubble, trying to get out, trying to buy a house with my wife in the next 6 months or a year in one of the surrounding cities. We really like La Crescenta, Pasadena. We'll see. Shit's crazy. Prices are outrageous. Maybe Glendale, maybe the Valley. We're looking into it. But in any case, had a lot of different jobs. And to rewind a little bit, have always been a musician my whole life. Played guitar, played in bands, I've toured in bands, I've played everything from a bar with one person in it to crowds of several hundred, 500 people, to clubs, small theaters, that type of thing. So guitar has always been a part of my life, and audio as well. And so I want to say it's 2008, 2009. It's really when I wanted to start recording my own songs, learning how to do that. I actually bought my first subscription of Pro Tools. It wasn't a subscription back then. You just paid a one-time fee. You got access. And started teaching myself how to record things, record my guitar, record vocals, making songs, making beats, working with other people, really just learning the software. That was on Pro Tools 8. Now there's a different system, but if it were to go by number, we'd probably be on Pro Tools 15 or something. So I have a lot of experience with the software. That's what I currently use to edit on and produce podcasts. That's where I started. A couple odd jobs. And then in 2013, I think it was, I started listening to podcasts very briefly, didn't fully know what they were. I grew up listening to Loveline with Adam Carolla and Dr. Drew. And then I realized that they had a podcast. I believe this was 2013. Started listening to that. And I was like, I think I could do this. I've recorded music, mixed music. This is just a couple people talking. It seems like way easier than recording guitar, piano, drums, and mixing all that together. And so I reached out to a Craigslist ad. They were looking for an intern to edit their podcast. The name of the show is Random Acts of Tangent. It was these couple of guys, and they would more or less do what it sounds, talk about random things and kind of go off on tangents. It was a comedy show. They were both funny. One of them did stand-up. And I started interning for them, editing their show. Really my first taste of editing podcasts, doing it for free, having fun, learning about the medium. Did that for a while. And then in 2015, I actually signed up for a site called Upwork. It was called something else back then, but it's now called Upwork. And I reached out to this girl by the name of Kimberly Snyder. She now has a massive podcast and a massive brand. She has wellness products. The name of the podcast is Saluna. She's written several books, New York Times bestsellers, but at the time, she was really early in her entrepreneurial journey. She was interested in starting a podcast, and I saw this post, and so I reached out and said, hey, I could do this. Didn't have a lot of experience in podcasting, had a little bit of a resume because of working on Random Acts of Tangent, and I got the gig. And I think that was 2015. It could have been 2017, but I think it was 2015. We'll have to check that. So I started editing your show, and I still edit it today. It's a big show, part of Podcast One, as advertising revenue, tens of thousands of downloads a month, maybe more than that. And that's really when I was like, okay, the music thing is tough. I've had a little success, wasn't really able to make a career out of it. I also, in this time, had worked interning at several recording studios for music. Didn't have luck. Thought I was going to be an audio engineer and record and mix records for the world's biggest artists. Did a little bit of that, maybe with some like C level, B- level artists. So this podcast thing started working out. I was like, all right, I can do this from home. This is pretty easy. It's just a couple of people talking. I've got this. And so what I did was I actually started cold emailing people. I would go through the Apple podcast charts and be like, hey, I can edit podcasts. I can produce podcasts. More so editing, not as much producing, but editing, mixing, publishing. Learned how to use Libsyn for the first time back then and was publishing on Libsyn for clients. Began learning more about podcast hosting and show notes and how all that works. And then I started cold emailing people. I would literally go through the Apple podcast charts, find shows, click on them. If it took me to a website, I would try to find an email address and be like, hey, I'm a podcast editor. If you need help with your podcast, I can take care of that for you. Throughout the course of like a year, I probably sent a couple hundred. I used to track how many emails I was sending. I definitely sent a couple hundred emails. And I got 2 or 3 clients. And meanwhile, I was doing this on the side. So I was making a little bit of cash. They trusted me. I was starting to build my resume. Wasn't really making a ton of money, but that's how I got started with podcast editing. Meanwhile, I was freelancing as a voiceover recordist here in Los Angeles. I worked at 3 different studios. I worked at Mark Grau in Burbank, DG Entertainment in Studio City, and this other studio on Lancashire in North Hollywood. It's now gone. It was called what was it called? LA something. In any case, learned how to record voiceovers. And so not the person actually doing the voice, but the person recording it. And man, we did tons of stuff. That's where I got my chops up and was able to kind of put some of that stuff on my resume as well, which eventually helped me get more podcast editing clients. Not the same, but kind of similar voiceover and podcasting, like 1 or 2 dialogue tracks, same type of vibe. And so I think that helped podcast people trust me when I would tell them the type of stuff that I was doing in the voiceover world. That's where I kind of got my taste of working with like big clients. Like I used to have a weekly session for Comedy Central where we would record all the Comedy Central promos, did stuff for CNN, Nickelodeon, video games, a lot of video game dialogue, Adult Swim, worked on that show Squidbillies, tons of commercials too for like Under Armour, Toys R Us, Cracker Barrel, Oracle, just a lot of branded stuff like that, the Discovery Channel. So that's where I cut my teeth. That's where I really got my editing chops even better too, because you would have to edit quickly in sessions and take the end of one line on take 10 and paste it to the body of the sentence on take 5, whatever. Getting my chops up, getting better. It was getting professional experience. At that point, I think considered myself, like a professional audio engineer. It was in late 2018 when one of the studios I was at, business slowed down a lot. And so they let me go, which wasn't terrible because I did have some of this podcast stuff going on the side. But that was really when I was like, all right, I'm going all in podcasting. I'm probably getting all these dates wrong. Late 2018, I believe it was, because I got married in 2019. And I remember it was right before the wedding and the honeymoon. And so I had some time to think about that during the honeymoon. I was in Hawaii and I was like, all right, I'm going all in. I'm going to build a website and I'm really going to make this happen. Named the company the Podcast Haven. The street I grew up on was called Haven Way. I just liked the ring of that. Built a website, crappy website, but that gave me a little bit more credibility, and then just kept reaching out. Cold emails, word of mouth, started going to some networking events in LA, meeting more people. This all happened really, really slowly. Eventually made a better website. That was V2 of the website. Right now we're on V3 of the website. From like 2019 till now, as of recording this, February 2023, things have gotten a lot better. Finally consider myself like a full-fledged company. Have several people on the team. And man, we've done thousands of episodes. We've done some stuff with Nike. I've done stuff with the LA Times. I've done stuff now with Sony and Lionsgate. It's a good time for podcasting. I think I was started at the right time as well, kind of before the boom, to be honest. And all through the boom of the last couple of years in COVID, fortunate that things kept going well, to be honest, and got a few opportunities. Have finally met a lot of people in the space and have gotten to work on some big shows and even produce shows from the ground up. That's more of our focus now, as well as taking over existing shows where people want to hand off the production to a new partner, to a new team if they're not happy with their current team. But yeah, guys, just wanted to give you a little bit of that background and where this came from and where I came from, where the Podcast Haven is today. Do have room to take on new shows. If you are someone who's listening to this and you're thinking about starting a podcast, feel free to reach out, info@thepodcasthaven.com. Would happy to talk to you more in detail, give you a plan for what your podcast could look like and how we could potentially work together with you. And the reason I started this podcast was for lead generation, because I was like, dude, I got to get my name out there more. I got to, generate revenue for the business. I got to grow a brand. And all that is slowly working and coming to fruition. But really realized like through this that I just like talking to you and to people and guests about podcasting. And I like teaching you. I've been in the space for a long time. I like introducing you to new tools and talking about some of the tools that I use and bringing on some exciting people that work for companies that can tell you what they've been doing and how maybe they could help you with your podcasting needs. And so initially started this for like lead generation, but now it's just like, yeah, I'm having so much fun sharing everything with you. I'm starting to feel like a family. And finally, I guess putting my money where my mouth is, because I feel like I used to give podcasting advice. And when it comes to like editing and audio advice, sure, I feel very comfortable doing that. I have a track record, have over a decade of experience. But then I was giving people advice about like how to podcast and how to market and, how to do show notes and this and that. And yeah, I've had a lot of experience with that from working with clients, but never really had done it by myself. So now that I've launched this, I feel like I've finally put my money where my mouth is. And instead of just giving advice from the outside, I could now give advice and recommendations from the inside. And that just feels genuine. Yeah, it just feels like I'm finally part of the community, because I feel like as a service provider, as an agency, yeah, you kind of live on the outside of the industry. But now that I'm a podcaster myself, yeah, I just feel more connected to a lot of people in the space. And I'm pumped about that. And hopefully that'll just benefit you. Hopefully we can connect. That's all I wanted to talk about today, guys. Just give you a little history of myself and my story, where I come from, where I am now. I want to keep doing this, want to keep growing. I also want to mention the blog, because I've been writing a ton of resources on the blog about a lot of the stuff that I talk about on here. I turn into podcast episodes, but then also coming up with fresh content. So if you are a reader, recommend going to the podcasthaven.com/blog, and you can check out all my articles. I also post them on LinkedIn. If you guys want to connect on LinkedIn, Eric Montgomery, it should come up. It should be pretty easy to find. You can look at my goofy mugshot on there. Thank you for rocking with me. Thank you for listening to my story. And I will be back next week, guys. Peace.
I know I cover up my fault lines with silly putty. Like the laughs gonna make the bad shit turn to nothing, but that's rubber, I'm glue. All I say stick to you, trying to get closer to the truth. Man, I ain't 22 no more, gotta shoot for the moon. Fuck if I fall on the floor, I always get back up, ask for more. I'ma keep playing pain strings till they chanting encore. Do you, don't let them push your youth through a door that they open. This an open wound, I'm an open book. I'm a kook, shooting hoop dreams, they breaking through the roof. They be at the tree of Eden, trying to tear out all its roots. I be aiming for a king, playing around in a booth. Like this'll all work out. Tell my mama I'll be cool, she ain't gotta worry about her little chicken flew the coop. Chicken, little knew the truth, the sky's always falling down. Everybody's reaching out, thinking they can grab the clouds.